the lane. 15-10. Touchdown, Chargers. What's up, guys? We're back. Week 3 of Chargers Weekly. Alongside Matt Money Smith, I'm Chris Hayre. Chargers with a little mini bye before the Jags this Sunday at SoFi Stadium. Money, it's been a week. I figured we rehash that Chiefs-Chargers game a little bit before we get into Jacksonville. I think a lot to digest in that one, especially in the second half. I felt like the Chargers were the more dominant team throughout. A couple mistakes here or there can flip a game, especially when you're on the road at Arrowhead.
You know, DJ does such a good job, Daniel Jeremiah, of kind of setting keys to the game and talking about what you got to do, you know, going in. And it's, you know, he's just so good at what he does that it all comes to fruition and it lays out perfectly. And his number one thing was Patrick Mahomes is going to give you a couple. You've got to cash them in, you know, every single game because he's so – and look, that's Herbert's the same way. Josh Allen's the same way. When you're a quarterback – with the ability of individuals like that, and you have, you know, the arm that these guys do, you're willing to throw balls into trouble and believe you'll just get them there. And that was the number one issue, you know. And look, part of it was on the Chargers. You know, there could have been a pick six from the end zone, a 100-yard return for Asante Samuel. He couldn't grab that ball. I thought he absolutely made the interception that was overturned just based on the call on the field. The fact that it was called an interception, you could see his hand under the ball. That should not have been overturned. And then just the egregious flag. And I don't know if it was the back judge or who it was that threw it, but shame on them on Bryce when Valdez-Scantling just kind of tossed him aside when he absolutely had a right to that path. As Valdez-Scantling was cutting back the opposite way on that Nas Adderley interception. So, you know, you got to cash those in. There was another one. I can't remember. There was a fourth one that should have been picked, and I can't remember if it was another Asante or what it was. But, you know, those have to be cashed in. To me, that's the number one issue from that game is they got pressure. Mahomes was uncomfortable. The interceptions were there to be had, and they weren't able to get them. You know, and that's the difference in the game, you know, and when Justin finally made one available to the Chiefs, they cashed it in for 6. So, but I'm with you. They were the dominant team. They moved the ball rather easily. I thought the Chiefs struggled to move the ball. You know, you had the one, and I guess my other issue, just to kind of finish up my bitch session whenever the Chargers play the Chiefs, is no team holds more. There is no team in the NFL that holds more on the line than the Chiefs. Creed Humphrey holds on every single snap. And I don't know if it's the way Andy Heck coaches O-line, and it's just like, whatever. They're not going to throw flags on every play, so just hold. But, like, the Derwin face mask, he makes that tackle if Travis Kelce doesn't have his freaking fist in his jersey and is yanking him back 2 yards to the left. So it happens every year. Every year they play the Chiefs. I watch the film, and I'm like, my God, can you get a freaking holding flag on this O-line? And it just never happens. So, like, to me, those are the issues. And then, obviously, just to kind of wrap it up, Chris, the problem with, you know, what the hell are you doing with that snap that led to the pick six? I mean, if Gerald Everett's trying to get off the field, somehow someone has to communicate. The speaker is on with Herbert, hey, hold on. You know, just slow it. I know you like the mismatch. You like where Everett is, and Watson's small, and that's an easy completion for a touchdown. But let's just reset. He ain't ready, you know, and it's either that or if you're Everett, suck it up, dude. You need 5. We need 5 seconds from you. You can give us 5 more seconds. So it's one of those two things, and that's the game, you know, and that's ultimately the game. And I'm with you. I thought they were the better team, and it's tough to let wins like that turn into losses. But a lot of good to come out of that. I feel great about Brandon Staley's defense and the scheme that he designed against Patrick Mahomes. It's just execution needed to be better.
Yeah, they nearly pitched a shutout. If it wasn't for the Bryce Callahan penalty money in the first half, it was a shutout of Patrick Mahomes in that first half. I mean, they were the dominant team for the first few quarters, and it reminded me in just the way it was starting to play out, like the second Chiefs game last year, where Chargers got after them a little bit in the first half and continued it, and then all of a sudden, here come the Chiefs. And I know it was a different game, but at first I thought the turning point was the Asante Samuel interception. I'm like, all right, this is the turning point of the entire game. No. It was the Gerald Everett miscommunication, which Brandon Staley put on himself on Wednesday and said he's got to take the accountability for that. And, you could debate how that shook out. First and goal from the 3, though, with 10 minutes left. I know you're going up tempo. I think there's a myriad of factors there that played into kind of how that shook out.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Look, Herbert saw the mismatch. He saw a mismatch. Yeah. He's like, let's go. I see it. Let's go get it. Let's cash it in. At the same time, awareness. Awareness of your surroundings. You've got first and goal. You've had your way with this team. But again, it's I hate putting it on players because, look, Gerald Everett made a great play the play before. He's carrying two guys for 10 yards. Awesome. Yeah, so, I mean, I get it. Dude, you're carrying two 215-pound guys for freaking 30 feet. Okay, you're entitled to be tired. It's a heck of a play by Everett. So I'm not trying to point the finger at him. I'm just saying I'm with Coach Staley. There's just got to be better execution in that moment by everyone. By Herbert to be aware of what's going on with Everett, by the coaching staff to be aware of what's going on with Everett, and then by Everett to be aware, oh, crap, I got to suck it up and I got to figure this thing out and know where I'm supposed to be, instead of standing with my hand on my hips when Jalen Watson jumps in front of me and takes it back.
Money, our guess is he's chomping.
He's here, and he's nodding, and he's
ready.
Judging our comments.
Listen, this is like the Kentucky Derby. He's going to come out the gates right now.
He's scratching his beard.
Yeah, he's ready to go.
He's typing. It's like he's doing everything he can. He's like, I want in on this. Don't take all my points. I want in.
Daniel Popper, The Athletic. I'm not even gonna ask him a question. I'm just gonna go silent and let you have a 2-minute opening statement. How about that, Popper?
All right, go silent count. So here's my biggest take, and this is my issue with how the response to this game. Thursday night game, week 2 against the team that has been the best team in the AFC for half a decade. You go in there, you play outstanding defense, you give yourself a chance to win. You lose, obviously, with some missed opportunities. You guys were talking about the dropped interceptions, Justin's interception, the pick 6 at the end there. This doesn't mean the Chargers are a bad team that they lost this game. It's so early in the season on a short week. This is, if anything, the takeaway from this game should be the Chargers are legitimate contenders. They went into a really tough environment and probably should have won the game. And if they make a couple plays here and there, they come out of there victorious. Instead, I feel like the narrative has been, the Chargers are a bad team and they have no chance. It's like, that makes no sense to me. There should be positives taken from this game.
I'll tell you, Popper, I do power rankings with Kay on her new show on FanDuel, and I had the Chargers ahead of the Chiefs. And, of course, I took a ton of incoming, and it felt great. And granted, maybe he has some bias too, but Danny Woodhead was on, and he's like, the Chargers were the better team. He's like, that's certainly my takeaway is this defense, the signings in the offseason, the trades they made, just the growth and the comfortability inside the defense. Yeah, that they got it. Brandon Staley went into that game with a scheme and with a plan that took care of that Chiefs offense. The whole narrative of, hey, don't miss Tyreek Hill at all coming out of that first week because Arizona decided to blitz him 53% of the time was gone. It was, without Tyreek Hill, Chargers are not afraid of this team. They're comfortable in their too high shell, and good luck. You can pick yourself down. And I thought the first 2 drives played out exactly how Staley would have drawn it up. Like, you know what? We're just going to keep everything in front of us. We're not afraid of Valdez-Scantling's speed. We're not afraid of Juju. And let's just wait for them to stall out or make a mistake. And it played out exactly like that. I'm with you 100%. I just think the Chiefs are so good, are still a very good team, and the AFC is so competitive that it's just hard to let a loss that should, that you think looked like a win get away, and now you got to go to Buffalo for the championship game or something. I think you just that's all my takeaway is. It's I think it's going to be such a perilous path to the Super Bowl that any advantage you can get, you really got to grasp and make sure you not let slip away.
And Pop, before you get going again, so they deferred, right? Staley wanted his defense out there to start the game, and to Money's point, they delivered. They did exactly what he thought they were going to do. We were in the press box together, and you see Twitter, 4th down, what's Brandon Staley doing? What's Brandon Staley doing? We talked about it all offseason. Brandon Staley has much more confidence in his 2022 defense, and I think that's another wrinkle to all of this is that I know that I think in some instances you prefer that he does go for it.
I wish he would have gone for it.
Yeah.
Here's how I view that whole situation. And it goes into the missed opportunities as well. You just can't give Patrick Mahomes more opportunities because he's the guys that do the Athletic Football Show, Robert Mays and Nate Tice, they refer to him as like a horror movie villain, like he's just like at the end of
call.
right like
that's a great call.
If you keep making these mistakes, he's going to come back at the end of the movie and kill everybody, and that's like what happened in this game. And you just gave him too many opportunities, and that was my issue with the fourth downs. Like, I get it, you have a better defense, you have a much better punt team, but like you got to take advantage of these opportunities. And if you make too many mistakes and give him one shot, all he needs to do is make like 3 plays in the fourth quarter and it's over. And that's what happened. You make one coverage bust where the safety doesn't play in the middle of the field on that long touchdown to Justin Watson, and all of a sudden they're back in the game. And so you had chances there where you're in opposing territory, you have 2 4th and 2s. It feels like you have to be aggressive in that situation against the Chiefs specifically, even though, you have a much better defense, obviously, and a much better punt unit with J.K. Scott and Josh Harris, the guys in coverage there. In terms of defense, 3 things jumped out to me. Number 1, this run defense is completely transformed. And I know that, and Money, you brought this up, I know they gave up that long run to Edwards-Helaire at the end there. There was an obvious hold on Derwin James. I agree with you there. But outside of that one play across 2 games, they've been outstanding in run defense. And what that's allowed to do, and to use a Staley term here, the scheme is able to express itself. On 2nd and long, on 3rd and long, Brandon Staley is getting some of these designer blitzes, designer sim pressures, and they're getting home. And, you see it. And using these designer packages and designer looks, they're able to engineer these one-on-ones for Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, and those guys are able to execute in those situations. And then the third thing that jumped out to me in this game is just how well they contained Patrick Mahomes to the pocket. He only threw for 44 yards outside the pocket, and 2 of those completions were on design bootlegs where he wasn't actually escaping the pocket. So they did an excellent job of containing him. Not only did they get pressure on him, but they didn't let him escape. And that's what happens when you have 2 really disciplined, really excellent edge rushers in Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. So those 3 things jumped out. And you're going to continue to see this because they're going to continue to stop the run. As long as these guys stay healthy, they're going to stop the run. They're going to get to these known passing situations, and you're going to get a lot of these designer packages. And the linebackers can blitz. It's not just Derwin James. Like, Drew Tranquill can get after the quarterback. Kyle Van Noy can get after the quarterback. And I've been really impressed with how Kenneth Murray has played in terms of blitzing, and then also as a run defender. He just looks like he knows what he's doing at a level that just he wasn't at in his first 2 seasons.
Money, that could have been a nightmare defense. That could have been a nightmare performance for Mahomes. It had a couple of those interceptions going the other way. And, the fact that Kelsey goes 5 for 51 when Derwin James is on him, I think it just reinforces the fact what a game changer Derwin James is. And when they do play later on in the season, you got a guy that can completely neutralize their best guy on offense.
Yeah, I think, I like the word you used there, Popper, express itself. And I think, when you bring up Kenneth Murray, he does look like a completely different player than we've seen the first 2 seasons. And I think part of that is, it's taken him a while to figure out what's the best way to use Kenneth Murray. Anthony Lynn and his staff wanted him to be a middle and the captain of the defense. That's not Kenneth Murray, And then last year they're like, well, let's try him at edge. And again, that's not quite where he belongs. Kenneth is see, go, use that athleticism, and you see it. And not to mention just the energy. He's got great energy on the field. He's not quite like a Derwin, but he makes splash plays. You hear the pop of the pads when he arrives.
You feel him.
And attacks.
You feel him.
Exactly. And I think that's what's, and then to Tranquill, it's funny. They're almost like the perfect combination where Tranquill, he is so good at seeing things before they happen. That split second before he always picks the right run fit. He knows exactly when he's crashing instead of dropping out and gets that tackle for loss, or when he gets the interception and he drops back and he senses he can bait the quarterback, bait Derek Carr into that throw. They're just a perfect pair. And I didn't think I was going to feel that way. I thought I would, want to see, and this is nothing against Van Noy, who's been solid as well. But, man, I love seeing Tranquill and Kenneth out there together. It seems like they really complement each other well, playing at that next level. And just kind of speaking to your point, I think one of the things last year was because Drew is such a cerebral player, he was trying to figure out, okay, who do I have to cover for? Like, who is going to let me down on this run play? And now he's out of position, and he can't quite execute the way he's supposed to because he's covering up for the mistakes of the guys that are in front of him. Now, I feel like he's just cut loose, and he can do what he does best, and I think we've seen that. You know, he's probably the one person that I talked about, that we talk about a lot coming in, like, oh, we're waiting for the Drew Tranquil season, and I think we're seeing that, and it's exciting to see it because we know how good of a player he can be, and I think, like you said, when the scheme's allowed to express itself, I think Drew's a big part of that expression.
Yeah, and just one more thing to add here. Like, linebackers have to, and you sort of hit on this point, Money, linebackers have to trust that these defensive linemen are going to be fitting in the right spots in order to go to the right place and then successfully execute their fits. And last season, when your zero technique is getting blown 6 yards back off the ball, the linebacker is going to have no idea where to go. They're going to fit in the wrong gap, and there's a huge hole because the front isn't maintaining the line of scrimmage. And so it looks bad on the linebackers, and everyone's criticizing the linebackers, but it all starts with maintaining the line of scrimmage and being physical at the point of attack, and that's what you're getting from these guys. And it's not just Sebastian Joseph Day, it's Austin Johnson. It's Otito Albania who's lining up in the zero technique and taking on double teams and not getting moved. And, like, sometimes it doesn't look pretty. He's a rookie, right? It's not like the technique isn't beautiful, but he's a big guy and he's hard to move. And all of a sudden, when that zero technique is taking on that double team from the center and the guard and not getting moved, the linebackers can see it, they can hit their gaps, and they can make plays and shoot through holes, make tackles for loss, or at least contain them to 2-3 yard gains. And that's what you're seeing in this run game right now. And I think that's why you're seeing Drew Tranquil and Kenneth Murray play so well.
Yeah, let's push it forward to Jacksonville, guys, because we've hit Kansas City, and I think there's some disappointment that they didn't win that game. But you turn the page to the Jaguars, and I don't think many people expected them to pitch a shutout against the Colts. And I know the Colts, and a lot of people on Twitter are like, well, it's the Colts. I'm like, well, hey, we picked the Colts to be a playoff team this year a couple weeks ago, right? Matt Ryan.
And they still might be.
They still could be. And they've started slow the last few years under Frank Reich. But I know their wide receivers look a little bit different than the Chargers. I know Matt Ryan, a little bit older than Justin Herbert. But the fact that you pitch a shutout, you get to Matt Ryan 5 times, 3 interceptions. They were the dominant team from start to finish. That offense is better with Doug Peterson calling plays and Trevor Lawrence in year 2. They have weapons that they didn't have last year. Everyone laughed at Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and those guys seem to be doing just fine. Evan Ingram, and they have a running game with Robinson and Etienne. So it's a more of a complete Jags team than we've seen in the past. And Money, I'll start with you. This isn't a game that I think Chargers fans are just going to assume that, hey, you're going to win, go to 2-1, and then go to Houston. I mean, this is going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, so there's a lot there. I guess I'll start. What do I want to do? I guess I'll start with defense. I'll start with the defense, and just so much attention played on Trayvon Walker because, I don't want to say it was a controversial number 1 pick, but, it was a debate. It's like, you're going to take this guy just on upside without production at Georgia because you like the measurables over Aiden Hutchinson, who, of course, had 3 sacks last week, and all that production at Michigan was the heartbeat of that program, finally knocking off Ohio State and getting into the playoff. So I think a lot of people are paying attention, and the Jags are getting validation for taking Walker because he's a problem. He's quick, he's strong, his levers are incredibly long, and if he gets his hands on you, it's a problem. But what I came out of that game with is you forget about Josh Allen and how freaking good he is and how fast he is because he wrecked the Colts line, whether it was the left or the right side. And the other name that no one's mentioning is Fatukasi, he was upfield on nearly every snap. If they were given help on the outside to Walker and Allen, Fatukasi was right in Matt Ryan's lap. Now, the Colts offensive line is banged up. It's a mess. So I don't think the Chargers are going to have that big of an issue. It was definitely there against the Commanders as well. But I think, and just quickly to kind of wrap up what I took away, and I watched all their pressures, and that's Devin Lloyd is also being overlooked. He's big, he's fast, he's physical. Not saying he's Fred Warner, I'm just saying he looks like Fred Warner. Like, that's the kind of linebacker that he looks like. He's big enough to stick you, but he's also fast enough to cover.
We talked about him as a first-round prospect during the lead-up.
It was a real impressive performance from them that I think it was helped by the limited mobility of Matt Ryan and by the ineptitude of the wide receivers to get open, and again with an offensive line that was really beat to hell. So there's my analysis of the defense. The front is really good.
Yeah. Pop, what about offensively for Jacksonville with, when you have a play caller like Doug Peterson and an immense talent like Trevor Lawrence, I think that they've found a little bit of a groove just 2 weeks in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think you're seeing what happens when you have an actual adult coaching the football team. Like you have obviously a ton of talent there. Trevor Lawrence was the number 1 overall pick for a reason. And I think a lot of people, made fun of this Christian Kirk deal, obviously in the moment, but they're using him really creatively. He caught a touchdown out of the backfield against the Colts. And listen, like I used to cover the Jaguars, and the reality is they have to overpay for free agents to get people down there.
Right.
Like that's just the reality of it. They overpaid for Rayshon. I love Rayshon Jenkins. I think he's a great player, but they overpaid for him. Shaquille Griffin, overpaid for him. Christian Kirk overpaid for him. But they're still talented players. Just because they're overpaid doesn't mean they're bad, right? And so that's kind of has to be the approach from Jacksonville. They've done it to get some legitimate NFL players in there. They're supplementing it with young players. And, this is the year for Trevor Lawrence to really take a next step with a legitimate, NFL play caller there in Doug Peterson. I think you're seeing some creative stuff from them. You mentioned the run game. I think it's going to come down to, can they get pressure on him? Can they rattle him? Because I don't think these tackles are very good. I think Cam Robinson's overrated. Jawan Taylor, obviously a former high draft pick, but I think there's a weakness you can expose there with these edge rushers, and if they can get pressure on Trevor Lawrence, that obviously changes everything. And I know it's a little bit of a simple answer, but like that's really where it starts. Is like, can you get pressure from these edge rushers against those tackles? Because I feel like they have a mismatch there.
No, that's a great point, Pop, because it's something, and we were talking about it before we got on. I feel like I have to preface this with the statement because, look, Gus is one of the best guys you'll ever meet in football. He'll talk to you about football no matter who you are for hours. Everybody loves him. He could not have had a worse game plan against the Jags with that Colts D. When he was playing single high, rushing 4, they didn't get home. Doug Peterson was scheming up pre-snap motion, those 3 buys, getting the inside receiver stuck on a linebacker, and it was just layups for Trevor Lawrence. You go back to the Washington game, or you go back to the 10% of snaps where he was, playing too high man press, and Lawrence struggled. He struggled against Washington. I watched every single one of his attempts, and I would say probably 5 or 6 turnover-worthy plays in there. When he got hit, you can heat him up. When you heat him up, the ball sails, it's offline, and there are interceptions and turnovers out there to be had. So I love what Doug Peterson's doing. He's scheming up a ton of layups. You mentioned it. Christian Kirk or Zay Jones are in motion. By the way, Evan Ingram, take off 17. It's driving me crazy that you're.
He's a wide receiver, though.
He is. He's not even a tight end.
It's fine
with me.
He's
not even a tight end. Yeah. It drives me nuts because I keep seeing it when I see 17 catch the ball. I'm like, who the hell's 17? And I got to look down on our lads into the tight end. So how about that? Yes, move him out of the tight end row and put him into the wide receiver row. But Peterson's doing a great job of scheming things up. There's a lot of screens. There's a lot of smoke routes that, like you mentioned, with Kirk. And I think it's a great point, Popper. I don't care how much Kirk makes. If he makes $18 million a year, okay, fine. Did they have to cut anybody so they could bring Christian Kirk in? No. It's what they paid the guy to get him there, and he's been a perfect fit. He's a great slot. He's almost exclusively there or in the backfield, and he's been viable. So I think you bring up a great point. The offense looks much better than it has because you've got an adult calling the plays, but there's opportunities to be had there.
Yeah, and that's just the reality of Gus's defense, right? Like what you're getting. Gus is relying on his talent making plays, but if you're in today's NFL, if you're an opposing offensive coach and that you're getting cover 3 on 75% of the plays, like you can sit there the whole week and scheme up cover 3 beaters, and you're going to get it at a high rate. And if your players aren't making plays, you're going to get beat. That's just the reality of how Gus plays defense, but he believes in it, right? He believes in it.
Sure does.
He believes in simplifying things and having his players play fast. But when it goes bad and the opposing offense is scheming things up against your defense and they know what's coming and your players aren't making plays, it can look pretty ugly.
Well, let's go back to the Jags defense real quick because it's a good segue into the big news here. in Costa Mesa is just really the health of the offense in general, with Justin Herbert and his ribs leading the way. Day to day, he was a limited participant on Wednesday. Corey Linsley did not practice. Trey Pipkins was a limited participant. Keenan Allen was a limited participant. Was Parham limited too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parham was limited as well. So, we're 2 weeks in, and this offense is pretty beat up. And you mentioned Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. Money. DJ did a film room that's going to be out on the Chargers website and YouTube on Trayvon Walker versus Rashawn Slater, and you see the flashes of Josh Allen on the other side. It's almost like a prequel to what the Chargers have with Bosa and Mack, right? It's just like these two young guys who I think could potentially wreck the league here over the next 5 to 10 years if they stick together. But in terms of Money, I'll start with you. In terms of Justin, and let's just assume he goes, right? It's going to be so important if especially if Corey's not out there or if Trey's not out there, that they make sure they have a game plan that eliminates any hits from Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick because I know I kind of already dug into this pretty deep, Pop, and you can just sort of pick it up. But look, they can help out. I trust Slater to beat anybody. You want to go one-on-one against Slater. Even I trust he will take care of Trayvon Walker. I'm good with that. Or Josh Allen, whichever one's lined up opposite. And then you can slide your help to Trey or Storm, with your tight ends and with your backs chipping. My big concern, Matt Filer had a bad game. He had a rough game against the Chiefs. And I don't know if that is because he and Linsley worked so well together, and once Linsley went out, he and Clapp just weren't quite in sync. But Zion had a great game. Zion played so well that Chris Jones left him. He was like, "Nah, I'm not doing that anymore," and he hopped over to Filer. I mean, that's what happened. And then all of a sudden, you found Chris Jones in the backfield seemingly every other snap. So that's why I brought up Fatukasi, because I think that's the one he and Arden Key is kind of kicking inside a little bit. They're running a lot of stunts and a lot of plays on the inside, and that's what really affected Matt Ryan. So that, Pop, is almost where my concern is just like what happened with Filer in that game. If Linsley doesn't go, can that be figured out? And how much of that was a product of Linsley going out and Clapp and Filer just not being on the same page?
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm not putting the red flag up yet on Matt Filer. I'll put an orange flag up, maybe a yellow flag. I mean, Chris Jones is
what's the orange? Yeah. What is orange? Like, hey, we're getting close.
Yeah, like I mean, Chris
DEFCON 3.
Chris Jones is the second best defensive tackle in the league, and that's no slight on him because Aaron Donald's maybe the greatest defensive player of all time. But Chris Jones is a very, very good player, but he could not get past Zion Johnson. Mm-hmm. I mean, he could not. And there was a rep early in the third quarter where Zion stood him up on a pass play, and that was the last time he went against Zion in the game. And over the remainder of the third quarter and the fourth quarter, they put him up against Matt Filer, and Matt struggled. And I didn't think he played particularly well in the Raiders game either. So that's why I have a little bit of an orange flag up there. Zion is the real deal. I mean, I talked to Rashawn Slater about Zion yesterday. I'm going to have more in my notebook on Friday. But, what people are saying is, obviously he's a rookie. He needs to polish his technique a little bit. But the way he's able to recover with his athleticism and strength is already elite. So it's definitely something to monitor with Matt Fowler. I think that's a good point, Money. Corey Linsley's injury is huge. Justin Herbert is the most important player on this offense, but Corey Linsley is not too far behind Justin. That's how much he means to this offense, and the protection changed completely when Corey Linsley went out in that second half. And I don't think Will Clapp necessarily played poorly, but go rewatch the tape from the play that Justin got injured on. Mike Dana, defensive end for the Chiefs, is lined up against Zion one-on-one. Matt Filer and Will Clapp double-team Chris Jones to the left in the passing play. Zion gets beat initially, and Mike Dana runs right up the middle, and Will Clapp has his back turned to him. And I watched that play about 100 times over the last 3 days. And I'm like, if Corey Linsley is in the game, he has such a high level of awareness that he probably senses that he knows Zion is one-on-one against the speedy defensive end on the interior, and he probably peels off and at least gets a little bit of a chip on Mike Dana. Justin Herbert can defend himself and protect himself a little bit more, and maybe we're not dealing with a Justin Herbert injury. And that's one. The second play that Justin got hurt 2 plays later, they ran a stunt where Frank Clark came to the inside. Again, Will Clapp has his back turned, doesn't really have the awareness. And that's not the stuff that you're going to see because, everyone's saying, okay, Will Clapp came in and did a good job. But those are 2 plays right there where your starting quarterback gets injured and you wonder, Corey Linsley's in there with his level of awareness, his intelligence. Does that even happen? And that's not even getting into, making some of these adjustments up front pre-snap, which Corey Linsley does a ton of, which takes a lot of off the plate of Justin Herbert. I know that talking to Austin Eckler after the game, they said Will Clapp picked it up, but like you're going from arguably the best center in the league to a replacement level player. That changes everything. So that's where it starts for me. If Corey Linsley is out of this game, what does that mean in terms of protecting Justin Herbert while he's injured if he does play, and maintaining their protection against what Money has said is like a fantastic front? Like that is to me the biggest storyline heading into this game between the Chargers offense and the Jaguars D.
And the run game, guys. I mean, 2.5 yards a pop in week 1, 3.1 in week 2. I talked to Bunny about it before we went on. They've been able to run on the left side, but the right side's still been a problem. And you know what I think needs to change? I think more carries for Josh Kelly. I mean, he's had 8 carries this year. He's averaging 5.5 yards a pop. He looked like a different guy in the preseason, and I think he's been running really, really hard. He ran hard in that one drive versus Vegas that set up a touchdown, I think, in the second half. And I think every time he touches the ball, he looks like he's the dominant running back, too, on this team. So with an injured quarterback, Buddy, I'll start with you. The running game has got to get going, but it's a challenge if Corey Linsley doesn't play.
Well, this will lead us into a different conversation, and I'm going to try to figure out how to word this properly. You've got to open things up. The run game is going to excel if you can open things up. And so, like Warren Sharp, his favorite target is Joe Lombardi right now. He has been coming after him, knives out, guns blazing. But when you go back and you watch every one of these attempts, we talk about how fast of a processor Justin Herbert has, how quickly he diagnoses. So I think what's happening is, there's a saying that in football, you can't go broke taking a profit. And, Herbert sees these 5 yards, these 6 yards, these 7 yards, and he's just throwing these dots and he's moving the ball. But if you give that play an extra second and a half, Guyton's coming open outside. Mike Williams is getting that post, and it's flashing open over the middle. But I get it. Like, Herbert sees an open man, and he's like, okay, there's 7 yards. I'm taking it. There's 5 yards. I'm taking it. But I feel like it's come at the expense of some of our shot plays. And so I think what's happened is defenses through these first 2 games, look, that's what the film tells you to do. They're creeping up. And so I think they're able to slow the run game down because they are not as afraid of Herbert's arm in these shot plays, that they're closer to the line of scrimmage. So, like, to me, you got to get more shot plays. You have got to push this ball downfield, get to that intermediate range more, because there's just so many quick outs, curls, sticks, and I'd like to see some more shots just to get things open. So they have to honor play action. So now the run game can breathe. And I just feel like it's not just the lack of ability to block on the right side, which has been an issue, but it's also the defenders are there. They're loading up the box because they're just, until they get burned, they're content to say, all right, well, we sure as heck don't want to deal with Herbert's freaking hose 40 yards down the field. If he's willing to give us these 7 yards, we'll take it. Much like the Chargers did to Mahomes all game long.
Papa, was it you that asked about Guyton in the presser?
Yeah.
Monday?
Yeah.
His snap count? Yeah.
Yeah, they got to get him on the field more. Listen, I think Money brings up a really good point. Some of it is the offensive scheme. Like, they run stick a lot. A lot of these plays, if you watch the All-22, there isn't a deep option. It's a lot of shorter developing routes. Some of it is how defenses are playing them. They know what Justin Herbert has, and they're putting a roof over the coverage. But some of it, too, is how Justin Herbert is as a quarterback. Like, he's not Josh Allen in terms of his mentality. Like, Justin wants to avoid mistakes. He wants to be perfect. Like, he's a perfectionist. Right. He does not want to throw interceptions. He does not want to make mistakes. And he always wants to make the best decision. In terms of a processor, he's closer to Drew Brees than he is to Josh Allen. Much closer to Drew Brees than he is to Josh Allen. So some of it is that they have this stuff in the design of the play, but Justin is getting through his reads so quickly, and he sees exactly what Money's saying. He sees a check down. He sees a curl route come open 5 yards, and he hits that, and he's getting past the deeper developing route quickly because he's such a fast processor and because of how he operates. And then the fourth component is protection. Like, if you break down the numbers in the first half, Justin Herbert's, everyone loves to talk about air yards per attempt, right? His air yards per attempt in the first half when Corey Linsley was in there was 8.18 yards. That's really damn good. Much higher than what Patrick Mahomes was in the first half. In the second half, it dropped to 3.1 yards. And it's all of this stuff together, but some of it too is the protection and also how much Justin Herbert trusts his protection when Corey Linsley isn't in there. And so I feel like we have these conversations about air yards and pushing the ball downfield, and it ends up, being targeted directly at the play caller when there are 9 million different components that factor into whether or not you're getting the ball downfield. And some of it is how the quarterback processes and what he is as a quarterback from a mental perspective. And that's a guy who's always trying to make the right decision.
What about the running game? With Eckler averaging 2.7 yards a pop the first 2 games, and that's such a big component to Money said, opening things up. If you have the running game going, I think your playbook looks a little bit different, Popper.
Yeah, I mean, get Josh Kelly the ball more. Like, it's pretty obvious to me. I understand that Sony Michel is a much better pass protector. You trust him more on those third downs and picking up blitzes and that sort of thing. But the way Josh Kelly has run in these outside zones, I mean, he's executing it to perfection. They're running him in these outside zones. He's putting his foot in his ground, and he's cutting up field, and he's running with decisiveness and explosiveness on these plays. And when a guy's averaging 5.5 yards per carry and he's showing that on tape, I understand that he might be a little bit of a liability in pass protection compared to Sony Michel, but he's being productive in the running game, and it's really providing the only production in the running game. And I don't want to – I'm gonna use a money phrase here. I want to make sure I phrase this correctly. Austin Eckler is still an elite running back, and he's going to put up numbers this season. But through 2 games, he has not looked like the same player to me. And I don't know if it's just early season. I don't know if it's the fact that they're, limiting his snaps early in the season to make sure he's fresher later on. We'll see what happens. It's early. I'm not going to make some grand statement here, but they need a little bit more from him, because they're relying on him to be a difference maker and to break some tackles and make these explosive plays. And I mean, they have 1 or 2 rushes over 10 yards on the season. A lot of that is blocking, but you need your running backs to make plays, and they need Austin Eckler to be that elite player for this offense to function.
Yeah, I think you hit it there, Popper. I don't think there is any question that this team is like, we want Austin Eckler for the back half of the season and the playoffs. We cannot afford to run him into the ground and have him break down like he has, repeatedly, because you ask so much of him and because he refuses to go down on first contact. Look, there were some great plays that Eckler made in the Chiefs game. The spin where he got the screen or the flat throw 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage that looked dead to rights, and he turns it into a 15-yard gain. Those plays are still there. He's still got that juice and that burst. I think part of Austin's yards per carry issue is they repeatedly were running him to the right before they finally threw in the towel, and said, all right, we can't make fetch happen. So let's just go back to running left, and it is what it is. So I think that's part and parcel of why that thing's 2-7, because there were so many carries run to the right where Trey's just getting shoved off his block and the tackle's being made. So it's something they're going to have to figure out. You can't just keep running one way, because ultimately teams are going to make that adjustment and make it a lot harder on you. I'm with you on Josh. I think with Josh, it's just making sure it's the right run call. I think Josh, if he's got the lane in front of him, he'll see it, he explodes, he attacks it with physicality. Where we've seen Josh get into trouble is when he's got to start stretching and deciding. It seems like he tends to make the wrong decision when those runs become available to him. So I think in terms of you've got to dial those up. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's physical, he's bringing contact to defenders and falling forward for those extra 2 or 3 yards. So I think dial those up. Get physical. Ask your line to blow guys a yard back so you can pick up 4 yards with Josh Kelly. I got no problem with that at all. But to me, I think it goes to your point, Chris, and that's, somehow whatever's going on with Eckler, if it's just, drawing it up to the left and getting some of those, because look, for the issues that Matt Filer has had with pass protection, he's still been solid. When he's asked to run block, he and Slater are a force. And I think you just got to get some more runs behind those 2 guys, get some production, get a rhythm for Eckler, and then see if he can carry you.
And obviously, guys, we focus on what's in front of us in that Chiefs game without really mentioning the fact that Keenan Allen wasn't out there. First of all, I want a collection of Money's calls of Mike Williams touchdowns at Arrowhead. I mean, the dude he's magical in that place. He was unbelievable in that game. He stepped up after having a tough game where he was almost non-existent until the second half of that Raiders game. But Keenan Allen's presence on this offense obviously means a great deal. We haven't really talked about him. If he's back, I think it changes things. And if we get that version of Mike Williams popper, look out.
Yeah, Mike in contested catch situations in that game against the Chiefs was unbelievable. I mean, just posting guys up and making outrageous catches, and that's not even including the touchdown catches that he had. I mean, the way he operates in traffic when he's got tight coverage on him, I mean, I can't imagine there are many receivers in the league better than him. But, I think with Keenan, where he shows up is on money downs. That's what he does. 3rd and 4 to 6.
And what was the problem in the second half?
Exactly.
A lot of 3-and-outs in the second half.
Exactly. And so, I think they really are hoping Josh Palmer could be that guy. And for whatever reason, he and Justin just weren't on the same page in that game. I still am kind of scratching my head about what exactly happened there. It just felt like there were some moments where they just weren't on the same page. There was that, little kind of wheel route down the sideline. Justin threw it to his back shoulder. Josh saw that there was no safety help over the top. He's trying to go deep. Just miscommunications like that. He had a slant where he was open. The ball's a little bit behind him. It just didn't come to fruition there. But you don't really worry about that with Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen because they're just so on the same page at all times, particularly in those big moments. And, in football, football's a funny game. 1 3rd and 4 or 2 3rd and 4s that you don't convert in a game can be the difference. And if Keenan's making those plays, all of a sudden we're having a much different conversation. So that has to be part of this conversation. I mean, the offense is completely, especially with the way that Joe Lombardi calls the game, having a receiver who can operate in that short area of the field like Keenan Allen is so valuable, and not having him changes everything. So getting him back would be enormous.
Yeah, and I think just going to put a button on that, going back to the Mike Williams and your Josh Allen comparison, just take the shots. Take the shots.
Yeah.
A punt is a turnover. A 3-and-out and a punt is a turnover. Just take the shot. Push it downfield. So what if you throw a pick? I think it just speaks to your Josh Allen where, you've just got to – you've got – I'm with you. 50-50s are 90-10s with Mike Williams. He's so tall. He's so good at contesting catches. Just throw it where only he can get it, and take more of those shots just to open that up.
Yeah.
Deandre Carter's been great. I want to see him out there. To me, when Keenan comes back, hey, who's the third receiver? Deandre Carter. I don't care how big I don't care how short he is. I don't give a damn. The guy runs crisp, precision routes, and it is clear. You were talking about, I don't know what's going on with Palmer and Herbert. I know what's going on with Carter and Herbert. He trusts him implicitly. He is willing to, that ball he threw after he gave up on the third down play because he couldn't move. That ball that he threw, man, double coverage. He knew exactly where Carter was going to be, how low to throw it. And, the touchdown he had against the Raiders was ridiculous. Just the shoestring catch that he made while running full speed and turned backwards into the end zone. So, to me, for all of the time we spent on is it Guyton or is it Palmer, it's
Carter.
What? Give me Carter, Keenan, and Mike Williams out there, and I'm feeling pretty darn good.
Yeah, the beauty of that seam ball that he threw to Carter in the Raiders game is Justin hit Deandre Carter on pretty much a mirrored play from the right slot in the inter-squad scrimmage at Jack R. Hammond Sports Complex, and I thought it was a touchdown on the play, but it's literally the same route, just to go right down the seam, and Justin hit him. And so that started in training camp, started in the spring, and they've had that chemistry pretty much since day one, which is really impressive.
All right, guys, let's end it here. Biggest key to getting their second win of the season against Jacksonville. I know there's a lot of issues. I know there's a lot up in the air right now in terms of health. Pop, I'll start with you. What's the biggest key to winning against Jacksonville?
Protect. Yeah. That's where it starts for me. On offense, you have to protect. Whether it's Linsley, whether it's Will Clapp, whether it's Storm Norton, whether it's Trey Pipkins, you got to hold up in protection against this front because that opens up everything, right? You have to be able to protect to push the ball down the field. If you can push the ball down the field, might get some lighter boxes. That opens up the running game. It all starts there for me, and blocking against this really, really talented front.
That may be the obvious one, Money. You have another one?
Yeah, I think just I'll take the opposite side. Heat up. Make sure you heat up Trevor. Like I said, when he had pressure, he's not the same guy. He gets jittery. The feet are unsettled. He throws into traffic or sails balls and gives you opportunity. So I have no doubt they're going to get pressure on him. I think this is going to be a defensive game. It's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, a lot of 12, some 22 even, and, just protect the heck out of Herbert and let the defense take care of this. Flip the field, get some short fields, create some turnovers, protect Herbert at all costs in this one. Because do we have Houston next or do we have Cleveland next?
Houston. Then Cleveland.
Yeah, so I think these next two, as you get ready for Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, let's make sure that, you keep Herbert in check and you keep him protected while he's out there. So that, I think, very much like it was in the Chiefs game, lean on your defense. They're going to make some plays for you. Cash them in when they do.
It's a great defense. It's a great defense.
Great defense.
It's a great defense. A top 10 defense in the league, and the vision is coming to fruition here. Like that's my takeaway from these first.
And by the way, second game for J.C. Jackson. Like you said, he played well. The touchdown by Justin Watson's not on him. He expected over the top coverage. It wasn't there. And outside of that, I thought he played well. So in his
100%.
First game back, so I expect to see. And, Callahan, who played very well against Renfro, is going to be on Christian Kirk a lot, I would assume, see if he can negate that as well as he's done so far all season long through these two games. So, yeah, I'm excited for what I think this defense is going to be able to do to kind of slow the roll on, having a grown-up calling plays and Trevor Lawrence taking the step kind of thing. I'd like to see him make a mess of this game for that offense and have some of those concerns come back.
Yeah, I'm sure they're looking at Chargers film and be like, oh, this is a little bit different than what we saw last week against Indianapolis, right?
Yeah.
And I just and with running the football, and I think you alluded to it, Popper. If you protect, that kind of leads to hopefully open up some holes and just opening up the playbook in general. But I think it starts with Eck getting going, with Kelly getting going, with Shell getting going. You got to see 5 yards a pop at some point. And I know with Linsley potentially being out and Trey potentially being out, that could be a problem. But it's got to be frustrating for this coaching staff to see the lack of production on the ground when that was what you spent all last year trying to figure out as well, right? And you feel like you figured it out with Kelly and Michelle, and we're kind of back to square one there.
It doesn't feel that far away to me. Like,
No.
watching the film, it does not feel like it's a complete disaster of a running game in terms of the blocking up front. Like, they're getting push. I know it's a tired trope, but it's like a block here, it's a block there. It's not always on the offensive line. It's tight ends missing a block. It's a fullback missing a block here. They're not that far away. Like, I fully expect this running game to have a big performance at some point in the coming weeks because it feels pretty close.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at, the two games. You got Antonio Gibson that rushed for 4.5 per carry. Curtis Samuel got 4 carries for 4.5 per carry. You go to the Colts game and look, Jonathan Taylor's the best running back in football, but, he's got 6 yards per carry. So it's there. It's there to be had against this front. It's more of a pass rushing front than a run stuffing front.
That Indy script look a little different when you get down so much,
exactly.
Right? You can't run the ball the way that you wanted.
Yeah, he rushed it 9 times. They were going for it on fourth. That's the thing is the Colts, like it's such a mess of a game when you watch it. They're in goal to go situations 3 different times. And they're just giving up these 10-yard losses on sacks, and then they're going for it on fourth down because it's the second half. So it's almost a little deceptive. It looks like the Jags defense completely shut down the Colts offense, which for the most part they did, but they did have opportunities in the red zone that they just straight up blew on first down, taking a sack for a loss of 12 yards.
It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be a tough game. Popper, we love having you on, buddy. It was fun. I appreciate you just popping in, waiting your turn, and then just hitting it out the gate.
That's what I am. I'm a north-south runner. Just decisive, foot in the ground, and get uphill. That's
terrible vision. But great north-south. It's all physicality.
Yeah. Just like sometimes I go blind when I'm in the midst of a take storm. But I'll tell you what, I get downhill, man.
That's right.
North and south, baby.
Plow people down. 3rd and 1. Don't put in Xander Horvath. Put in Daniel Popper.
Just give me the rock and let me spew takes.
All right. For Pop and Muddy, I'm Chris. We'll see you at SoFi on Sunday. Have a good one.